I'm Jason Gillespie, and you're listening to How's That, the cricket podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of How's That, the cricket podcast with me, Ollie.
And me, Lily.
We've actually got some live cricket in Australia that we can talk about. It's been a long while. Obviously, we've had the English summer, we've had internationals, but we've got some cricket in Australia that we can have a talk about. We've got WNCL, we've got a little bit of the One Day Cup as well we might brush over. We've got WBBL. We've got domestic cricket back in Australia. How good's that?
Yeah, it's been virtually the whole length of this podcast for Australian cricket to kick back in. Because I started the podcast right at the back end of the Australian summer. So, like when finals was on for Big Bash. So this podcast has literally been virtually no Australian cricket. So we get back into what's relevant, really.
I mean, a lot of it's relevant, but obviously it's closer to home, which helps. We're an Australian-based cricket podcast without much Australian cricket until now, which is a good thing. We have got some WNCL, which we will touch on. But straight off the top, though, just to tease our guest, this time we're not going to mess around any longer. It is Jason Gillespie. He will be on just after we have a bit of a chat about cricket, but to have an Australian cricketing legend, I don't think that's understating him whatsoever on this podcast, is an absolute honour. And that interview is coming up very soon. But as we always say, you've got to listen to us natter about cricket first before we can get to the guest. And we will start with WNCL. And perhaps we're better to start than the second game between South Australia and Victoria, because for our listeners, you would have heard a very, very familiar voice on commentary.
Yeah, so I was lucky enough to make my commentary debut for South Australia versus Victoria, which was an extremely exciting game, to say the least, for 50 over cricket, which is, you don't usually get a game this close. But because of the horrible weather in Adelaide, it was an extremely close match. But yeah, no, it was really fun to be able to talk about it and for my voice to be heard worldwide, really. I had people messaging me, tuning in from England and all sorts of countries, California. So that was fun. But yeah, no, a really, really good game. Very, like, towards the end there, we were all just saying, like, it really could go any way, and it kept on swinging. So Victoria were on top, South Australia were on top, and it just kept on changing. But it ended up being a tie, which was mental. And it was going to go into super over, but it didn't because of the rain. So do you want to talk us through that game, Ollie?
Yeah, well, obviously you were there and you did a wonderful job. If we had a soundboard in front of us, there would have been a round of applause there, and you would have been deserving of it because you're absolutely wonderful. It was interesting hearing you talk about, the fact that we were heading into a super over, because it would have been the first ever WNCL super over, but the rotten weather in Adelaide meant that we never got there, and in the end we just had to settle for a tie. But it was a ripping game of cricket. Like, I was sitting there on the edge of my seat watching at home, just trying to will Victoria over the line pretty much. And Sophie Molyneux did a good job of that herself. She made a wonderful knock that almost got us there, but in the end ended in a tie. We were thinking after the first game between Victoria and South Australia, how is the second game going to top it? But I tell you what, if it didn't top it, it went incredibly close.
Yeah, it did. I mean, look, from a South Australian perspective, it was not as good, because that first game of Tali McGrath hitting 3 sixes to bring up 100 and to win, I don't think you can beat that. And even as a Victoria fan, I think you got to credit her there, because that was pretty amazing.
Of course you do. Like, it was heartbreaking, but you credit where credit's due. You got to sit back and go, well, wow, what an incredible cricketer. What an incredible way to win a game of cricket, because it is. But that doesn't stop me from being really, really sad at the fact that we lost it. I was hoping that we'd even it 1-1, because you obviously had your bit of Twitter dialogue at me, firing shots saying, oh, it's going to be a long summer for you, being a Victorian fan and being a Stars fan. You're in for a long summer. And I was just hoping that I would get a little bit of respite just at the start of the summer, just to say it's 1-1, even it up. But that would have been nice. Didn't get there, but it is what it is. It was a wonderful game of cricket. I thought Gemma Barsby, by the way, was exceptional with the ball in that second game. I didn't manage to catch much of the first game. In the second game, she was absolutely brilliant, I thought, with the ball. With the spin. Pace didn't really work on that pitch, I didn't think. Because we saw Tess Flintoff get taken to a little bit earlier on when Victoria had the ball. But I think it was more of a spinner's pitch, I reckon. And Gemma Barsby was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, she was. Well, 4 for 21 off 5 were her stats there. And Amanda Wellington taking the other wicket as well. And then all the pacers no wickets in that game. But also what was really surprising, and we couldn't quite believe it when we were up in commentary, when Elise Perry had ball in hand. And I think I was on when she had the ball in hand, and we were just saying, oh, she's here just shining the ball, or, wiping away the water on the ball because it was raining. No, it was Elise Perry coming on to bowl, which is something that we have not seen in quite some time. So we were shocked that she'd come on to bowl, but she did quite well. She picked up the wicket of Emma De Bro and a brilliant catch by Molyneux. She was diving out to their side and absolute screamer. So yeah, that was really good. But then also, not to mention, like, a really late partnership by South Australia. There was 7 down, and Gemma Barsby and Megan Shute come out, and Gemma Barsby scores 42, Megan Shute scoring 33, not out. Really good. Really good. Really unexpected. Megan Shute and Gemma Barsby just brought the score back up to South Australia and made it somewhat defendable.
It was a wonderful knock, and it was incredibly disappointing from my point of view, obviously being a Victorian fan, because there is no way that we should have let that game, it was going to go to a super over. We shouldn't have let it been that close. Like, we should have wrapped it up maybe 120, 130 tops and got there really comfortably. But no, we let you put on another 80 odd, 90 odd, whatever. And in the end, that's got you points. Like, we should have won that game very, very comfortably, because the bowling at the top was absolutely brilliant. Emma De Bro played some nice shots. She was getting into gear, but outside of that, there wasn't really too many. There were some absolutely farcical runouts. A lot of them, were really, really poor bits of communication. I think Webb was involved in a couple of them, wasn't she? Especially one with Tali McGrath that I thought was going to turn the game, because Tali McGrath looked, like she wasn't going to be going anywhere, as always. But, it looks like the only way we were going to get her out was through a bit of either brilliant bit of skill or a bad bit of misfortune from a South Australian point of view, and that's the way it proved. But in the end, 2 really good games of cricket between 2 wonderful sides. And in the end, the second game, they couldn't split.
Yeah. And you mentioned about the runouts there from Victoria's side. And I think it's crazy because 3 of the runouts were by Annabelle Sutherland. Like, the chances of multiple runouts occurring is pretty low, but for 3 of them to be by the same person, it's pretty mental. And then got another wicket caught as well. So I just thought, like, Annabelle Sutherland was on that day. But what really let them down, actually, between that Gemma Barsby and Megan Shute partnership, was Annabelle Sutherland dropped Shute really early on, right near when she first came in. And, just thinking about it, you're like, it's one of those, whatever, wasn't too big of a missed opportunity. But it proved to be a big missed opportunity. And I think that's what let Victoria down ultimately, was that drop catch by Annabelle Sutherland. But, you've got to live these experiences to learn from them.
And she's a quality player, as Annabelle Sutherland, and like, even when you're involved in so much, like, that one drop catch did cost us the game. But then again, on the flip side, you say, well, she made 3 runouts. A couple of them were absolutely exceptional bits of fielding, by the way. Not to take away from fielding. With you could say the runouts were poor by South Australia, and they were. But of course, when you're Annabelle Sutherland and in her position, you've got to obviously make the play. But the drop catch, did cost us and took away from her game a little bit. But I still think that she, did a lot of nice things. But if she just stuck that catch, we probably would have won the game really comfortably.
Mm-hmm. And then quickly going back to the first match between South Australia and Victoria, Victoria set 264 for South Australia to chase down. They're only 2 wickets down. Sophie Molyneux got a duck, which, to be fair, I don't think was out. By her reaction and by the way that the ball was moving, I don't think she hit it. But it's over now. And then McKinley Blows out for 23. And then Elise Perry and Annabelle Sutherland both scored hundreds. Elise Perry 117 not out. Annabelle Sutherland 110 not out. So good from them. And I think for 2 players to score 100s and not get over the line is actually really disappointing. But like, again, it was Tali McGrath who won that game for them, wasn't it? It was the 6 to bring the score quite close to South Australia, and then a 6 to bring up a 100, and then a 6 to win. Incredible.
Yeah, like, if you're Victoria, one, of course, you alluded to the disappointment of 2 players making 100 and losing, of course. But when you've got that many runs to play with in the final over, you really shouldn't throw it away. And I'm sounding really, really critical of Victoria here, and it pains me to do it. But again, that's the first game isn't a game we shouldn't have lost. The second game is a game we shouldn't have lost. and it's 1.5 to a half, if you will. Like, it should be 2-0 Victoria. It isn't, because we've been in two really good positions and thrown them away both times. It's annoying, it's frustrating, but it happens. I'm sure we'll be up there towards the end of the season. I'm not panicking. I'm not worried. We've got some quality players, and I think we'll bounce back. Obviously, we've got Tasmania next week, so there's a chance for us to bounce back straight away. Back in Victoria as well, so hopefully we can do all right there and get our season, on track.
Well, the winners last year, Tasmania, so I think it's going to be a tight competition. I don't think you should go in with too much confidence there, because they did win it last year, so it is going to be a good game, that's for sure.
It's not arrogance. I'm not going out there saying that we're gonna win. That's not what I'm saying at all. But it's just nice to get back in Victoria, play a couple of games. Again, it's going to be a test because, as you say, Tasmania won it last year and they've got some brilliant players. But we're back at home, and we need to get a win on the board. I know there's only 2 games in, but just for confidence, it would be nice to at least win one of those games. If we break even, win one, lose one, just for the feeling of winning to get back again, it would just be nice to at least take one of those. And I can't even sit here and say whether we will or not. I'd like to hope so, but it's going to be close. Hopefully we can get at least one. I'm optimistic in that sense, but obviously we're not going to blow them out of the water both times. No chance.
Yeah, we'll see. I guess that's one that we will keep everybody very updated with. But then moving on, the next competition was between WA and ACT. And look, to be fair, ACT, they are a really young squad. They haven't got any Australian players in their team. And the most experienced players they have is Katie Mack being the captain, Holly Furling, and Carly Leeson, who plays for Renegades and Big Bash as well. They're the most experienced players, I'd say. The rest are quite young and new to the team. So yeah, it didn't go too well for ACT in either games. They were all out for 143, and Western Australia ended up on 2 for 147 off 30 overs. So they did that with ease. The high score from ACT being Rebecca Castle with 65, Katie Mack second top scorer with 27, which is quite a big difference there. But Alana King with 5 for 12 off 8 overs, just amazing. Alana King is, I can't even express how good she is. And then Western Australia batting side, Beth Mooney 17, Chloe Paparo 75 not out, Maddie Dark 15, and Matilda Carmichael 27 not out. So yeah, they knocked it off with ease there, and yeah, not looking too good for ACT, I must say, because in the second game they didn't do too well either. Western Australia was 6 for 297. Beth Mooney 151 not out. Incredible.
It's a lot of runs.
Incredible. And then Chloe Paparo 42, Maddie Dark 47, and then the next top scorer was Amy Edgar with 20. So yeah, really mental by Beth Mooney there. Gabby Sutcliffe with 2 for 45 off 6 overs was the top wicket taker. And then wickets shared around evenly between Holly Furling, Chloe Rafferty, and Olivia Porter. ACT just not passing the 200 mark, all out for 180 off 43 overs, with the top scorers being Katie Mack with 57 and Rebecca Castle with 26, and then Carly Leeson with 25. And then podcast guest Tennille Peschel, 2 for 35 off her bowling, and Lily Mills 2 for 30 off her 10 overs, and Alana King again 3 for 31 off 10. Alana King's pretty unstoppable here. Yeah. And so is Beth Mooney by the looks of it. And I'm concerned because Western Australia are looking really good. Putting a score of 297 on the board is pretty good.
It is. It definitely is. And Beth Mooney is a wonderful cricketer. Like you say, it was a rhetorical question, but I answered anyway. How good is Alana King? Too good. How good is Beth Mooney? Too good. Like, they've got stars everywhere you look. It's unbelievable. And the one thing for ACT, like, I like to try and find a positive spin on things wherever I look, and it's not been a positive weekend for ACT at all. But you alluded to the fact before that they've got no Australian players, which obviously in a quality sense, that's not great, but for a team synergy sense, that might help them out later in the year when other teams are affected by the Australian call-ups. They may be able to, build that team chemistry and maybe get a win here or there, but it's not a great start. But, as they say, it can only go up from here, I suppose. But back to Western Australia, they are genuinely looking incredible. It's having that many players who can play cricket that well. Like, it's so tough if you find yourself in the opposition, because you're just not going to win many games. Coming up against Beth Mooney, who can hold a bat, as good at her best as anyone else in the world. And Alana King, who's probably, I don't know where you'd put her, worldwide spin bowlers. You'd put her in the top echelon for sure. You're looking at Sophie Eccleston from England, and there can't be too many before you go to Alana King.
Yeah, no, I agree. We mentioned that obviously about Western Australia almost cracking the 300, but a team who did crack the 300 was Queensland, scoring 307 for 9, beating New South Wales very comfortably by 111 runs. New South Wales just really aren't looking great. And like I said, last year, they really struggled in the Big Bash. And the WNCL team's looking quite similar. And obviously, it's too early to say, but their first 2 games did not go well. So Queensland, Georgia Redmayne 6, didn't start off too well, but Georgia Vole, 145. Again, just so good. So good. And she is obviously really young. And she's only really just started appearing like last season. The season before, you wouldn't really know who Georgia Vole is. So for her to appear pretty quick and to score 145 is mental. It's really, really good to see her do so well in the 50 over stuff. And it'll be really exciting to see what she can do in Big Bash.
It looks like a game made for us, doesn't it? It looks like it's tailor-made for a T20 cricket. It's been a weekend of high run scorers. We mentioned Perry and McGrath and Sutherland and now Georgia Vole, Beth Mooney. Like, runs have been quite easy to come by if you've got a bit lucky. Obviously, it takes more than luck. It's a lot of skill as well. But, if you've had the rub of the green, runs have been very, very plentiful if you know where to look. We've had a number of hundreds, and that bodes well for not only those players, but also for the competition and the summer of cricket as a whole.
Yeah, definitely. But then to kind of carry on with that game, Ebony Hoskin was on debut for New South Wales and took 3 for 39 off her turnovers, which I think is worth a mention. And Erin Burns with 2 for 54. Sammy Jo Johnson with 2 for 71 off 10, which is, lots of runs, but 2 wickets. So it's like, which way do you go? And then Ash Gardner with 1 for 43 and Lauren Smith with 1 for 37. So yeah, look, just not too great for New South Wales. Their top scorer being Talia Wilson with 65. And then just low scores pretty much after that. And then for their second game, New South Wales set all out for 155. Again, not too great. And Queensland literally knocked that off in less than 20 overs. 19.4, they beat that in, which is crazy. Only 2 down. So the high score from New South Wales was Phoebe Litchfield with 42. And then Georgia Prestwich, 3 for 28. Courtney Sipple, 2 for 36. And then wickets 1 between everyone else. Georgia Redmayne, 61 not out. Grace Harris, 77 not out. Again, like we said, Western Australia are looking dangerous, but so are Queensland.
They certainly are. Queensland are looking on fire. Western Australia are looking on fire. And it's one of those where, we can't predict the whole competition after one weekend. Yeah, it's too hard to do. But New South Wales, drastically below where they've been in years gone by. You look at Victoria and South Australia, really, really evenly matched. You've got Queensland and Western Australia who look to be well ahead of the rest, in my opinion. Well, off 1 week, again. We preface again by saying it's only 1 week. And then you've got to fit Tasmania somewhere, who are the reigning champions of the WNCL. It's spicing up right from minute 1. And it's going to be must-watch cricket. Like, you're sitting there going, we had cricket, for the South Australia-Victoria game on Sunday. It was literally from what? 10 a.m. to like near on 8, I think it was.
Like
or 7, yeah. Or local time or time here in Victoria. Like, there's so much cricket on wall to wall, and there's so many places you can watch it. You've got Cricket Australia, you've got KO. So if you're not doing anything and there's games on, have a watch, because it's really spicing up already, which is brilliant to see.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's such good cricket, and it's just showing the quality that it has here in Australia. It's amazing. So yeah, like Ollie said, if you can, the next game is Friday, so the 30th, between New South Wales and Western Australia. So if you can, tune in on KO, tune in on cricket.com. Internationally, you can watch it on cricket.com, I believe, or the Cricket Australia app. So if you're international, you can watch it there. It's definitely worth a watch. It's going to be, an amazing tournament. But moving on, we will go through the WBBL signings that we haven't. Now, last week, we didn't think that we mentioned who the Stars signed, did we?
I don't think we did, but just for my happiness, we'll mention it again if we did last week, and we don't think we did, but just to cover off all bases, Alice Capsey is a Star. Now, the thing that I want to mention about this is off air, we obviously recorded the episode, I think it was 2 weeks ago now, where the Stars were about to announce the signing and didn't. We hoped that they would do it on air. And you said to me, if it's Alice Capsey and you call my phone, I won't answer. So I saw that it was Alice Capsey, called you straight away, and I thought you were going to honour your word. Gladly for me, you didn't. You did pick up the phone.
Then I hung up.
But you hung up very, very briefly, but like I did sort of offer my condolences, if that's the correct word to use. Like,
I was just a bit heartbroken on the inside. I was like, I can't believe she's going to be wearing a green jersey.
Yeah.
I
I was really glad you picked up, because I didn't, you know one of those where you just think like you're really annoyed at somebody. I thought you were going to be really annoyed at me because of what my sports team did.
I mean,
I thought that
you
was gonna
didn't
be a
have any
ripple effect.
control. You didn't have any control over who was signed, so
I
I can't be too angry at you. But I am very disappointed, I must say. But at least that means she's coming down under, and we have a chance to see her, which is a positive way to look at it, I guess. But then joining her in the English duo is Lauren Winfield-Hill, who didn't do too well when she was over here for the Big Bash for the Strikers, but she has been in form, really in form in England. She did really well in the 100, won it with the Invincibles, won it with the Northern Diamonds in the Rachel Hayhoe Flint Trophy, which we didn't mention. Northern Diamonds won, beat the Southern Vipers. So yeah, an informed cricketer who isn't playing for England anymore, so has lots of time on her hands to play other cricket. So yeah, that's going to be an interesting one, I think.
Yeah, it is. And I was really happy with the signing. And obviously because she hasn't, perhaps been her best for the Strikers, you were like, oh, well, you can have her rather you than me, which I was really surprised by, because I'm a massive fan of Lauren Winfield-Hill. Maybe you not so much, but
I like her. I just
she
never did too well for the Strikers, so I was like, well, but like I said, she's in form, so she could do really great things for the Stars, which I'm sure she will. But then going to the Thunder, Tammy Beaumont signed on with them. She was with them for WBBL 06 when they won, along with Heather Knight, who hasn't signed, but Tammy has.
Again, it's nice because obviously both of us are England cricket fans. Both of us, support England internationally. And both of us want to see English players come over here and do well. And we're going to get a lot of opportunities to see that this year with Capsey and Lauren Winfield-Hill, even more so for me, given that they're playing for the Stars. We've got Eccleston, Sydney Sixers. You've got Tammy Beaumont now. It's going to be good.
Wyatt.
Danny Wyatt. There's tons that are probably not even mentioned. Of course, Izzy Wong.
So then moving on, Susie Bates has moved to the Sixers, which shocked me. It really did. I knew that we weren't getting her back, obviously, but wasn't expecting the Sixers. Again, another informed cricketer. Corinne Hall has signed on with Thunder, which really surprised me because she retired from WNCL, and I didn't think she was going to play again in Big Bash, but here she is. I guess we'll see what happens. Annika Learoyd also signed 3 more years for the Thunder. Megan Dixon has signed on with the Strikers. She didn't play last year because she had a finger injury, but maybe she'll get some game time this year. And then young players Hazrat Gill and Olivia Henry have signed on with the Stars to fill in those last little spots down there. They're the local girls. But yeah, I think that is it. And Meg Lanning's not playing.
Yeah, well, that was the interesting one. That was the bombshell that came out today. I'm going to look like a right fool. Because I said, I reckon the Stars would win it all. I didn't mean it, by the way, when I said that. That was just to try and... maybe
or you're backtracking.
I told you I didn't mean it. I just put it out there because there was a couple of people on Twitter that got really annoyed at me as if to say, what, you genuinely think the Stars are going to win? Like, give your head a wobble. I don't, like, of course I want us to win. So it was biased, and it was what would you call it? It was to ruffle a few feathers, right? But even still, I pressed the tweet button, and I'm going to look like a fool now because Meg Lanning's not playing, who we all know how good Meg Lanning is. It's not looking good, but we'll save that discussion for another day.
Yeah, and then I mean, look, it depends on whether Jemima's playing, because obviously with her injury that put her out of the 100, and there have been talks about her, like, is she even coming over? So if she comes over, that's a start. But whether she gets a game, that's a different story. So like, I would like to see her play because I really like watching her bat, but it wouldn't be too good for the Stars if she doesn't play or doesn't come over because of injury.
No, certainly not. But that's a discussion for another day for sure. But hopefully Jemima Rodriguez comes over, because I want the Stars to have some level of success this summer. Whether we'll get it, I'm not too sure. But moving on, it's probably worth it if we talk about some of the stuff, even though we talked a lot about what's happened over on Australian shores. We probably should have a quick talk about England and what's happened over there, particularly with a certain wicket that took place in a certain international match that may or may not have involved a mancad. What do we reckon? What side?
I don't want to say my opinion because people are going to come at me no matter what.
Well, the thing is,
you can never escape it.
You're allowed an opinion, though. It's been all over the world. I think we have to mention it.
I think that, yes, it was fair. If she had been warned, fair enough. It was purely just lack of attention by Charlie Dean. So I think this is the thing. I think if it was maybe like, I don't know, the 4th wicket, then I wouldn't have cared. But because it was the last wicket to win a series, like to win a game, I just think it was pretty poor from India. I just think it definitely like wasn't, very good sportsmanship, I don't think. But that's just my opinion. I'm not going to talk too much about it.
Well, the thing is, though, like, I remember listening to something, I can't remember where it was, so apologies to whoever it was that said it, but there is very rarely a 4th wicket mancad. If you're mancadding someone, it's out of desperation. India knew that they were in trouble. And so they said, you know what, here's a way to get a cheap wicket. We'll run someone out of the non-strikers and who's on form. It's not a man. I really don't like mancads. I really, really don't like mancads.
No.
But it's so hard, if not impossible, to remove them from the game. Because at the end of the day, it's a legal run out. Like, you're running someone out, they're out of the crease. It's a run out, but it's not a great look. At the end of the day, I hate mancads, but I'm going to be diplomatic, because if we're being realistic, there is no way to get rid of them.
No.
Was it a good look for the game of cricket? No. Is it legal? Yes. That's all I'll say.
And then Charlie Dean, the next morning in the
hilarious.
Rachel Heo Flint finals, so she pretended to mancad Lindsay Smith when her foot was slightly out of her crease, but obviously she wasn't going to, but she laughed it off. It was funny. Everyone found it very funny. So really good sense of humor there from Charlie Dean. So obviously, really quickly, in the Rachel Heo Flint Trophy final, the Northern Diamonds beat Southern Vipers, which was really surprising because Southern Vipers only lost 1 game throughout the entire season. It was the Diamonds, but it was throughout the entire season. Quite surprising because Southern Vipers are a really strong team. So the final was won by the Northern Diamonds by 2 runs. Stand-up performances from Lauren Winfield-Hill with 65. Ashley made a player of the match and 2 catches. Bess Heath with 44 and Leah Dobson with 34 not out. And then bowling-wise, Holly Armitage 2 for 46. Katie Levick 2 for 44 and Lindsay Smith 2 for 24. So a really good game by the Northern Diamonds, and I'm glad they won, because it's good to mix it up from the Vipers for once, because they just win everything, and a bit sick of Vipers winning, to be fair.
The underdog story.
Yeah,
it's always one that everyone subscribes to, isn't it? No matter what sport it is. Like, if you're not a fan of a team and the favourite, I think 95% of the time you want the underdog to win. So it's a fair play. Obviously, we all expected the Southern Vipers to win. They didn't. It just proves that you've got to turn up in the big games, and they didn't quite do it.
Yeah. So now moving on, like we heard at the beginning, we've got Jason Gillespie on the podcast this week, and it was really good to talk to Jason. Just a heads up, it was windy. My audio's slightly quieter than his because he had the microphone, I didn't. We were outdoors. at Park 25, so it was a bit crazy, but I think it's okay. It is okay.
I was recording from this spot in my bedroom window, by
Yeah.
the way. I'm extremely jealous. Like, in hindsight, it would have been good to fly out to Adelaide, but it was one of those things where it was like the day before, it was like the opportunity of a face-to-face interview came up and you can't really turn that down.
Yeah.
But I know you mentioned on commentary for the South Australia Victoria game, you had the Tour de Rolton, as it's now been coined.
Yeah.
We had the qualifying heat for that, if you will, during the interview as well, because we had some bikes coming across the back of the interview when we were interviewing Gillespie. So
we had everything: planes, trains, ambulance. Let's play a bingo. Count how many things you can hear in the background of this interview and send us a message, because I want to see what you can check off in the interview. But yeah, really good interview. Really funny, nice guy. I think he shows his humor in this interview and just very down to earth. And yeah, really grateful that he was willing to give up his time while they were playing a game to chat to us. So without further ado, enjoy the interview with Jason Gillespie.
Fantastic performance from one of the best emerging quick bowlers in the world game. 7 for 37 from this South Australian fast bowler that has made such an impression already on the history of Ashes cricket.
Welcome and thank you very much for joining us today.
No problem.
Now, we are here at Park 25. There is a game going on right in front of us. Do you mind telling us what this game is and what's happening here?
Yeah, so we're here at Park 25. Obviously, it's pre-season for us, South Australian cricket team, and we've got an extended squad. We have over 25 players on our staff, and we've split the squad into 2 teams, and we're playing a series of trial games. So just to lead into the season proper, which starts at the back end of the month. So it's great to just get outside and get some meaningful, purposeful practice before the season starts.
Yeah, so when does the season start and how long have we got until that all kicks off?
So it's a couple of weeks from now. We play up in Queensland. We've got 2 one-day games against Queensland and Tasmania in the 50-over competition. And then we hit the ground running with Sheffield Shield Cricket. We'll have 3 games in October, starting here at Carron Oval, which is just over the way here next to Park 25. And that's when the Sheffield Shield season starts. So this is just a great opportunity to get outside and get some good practice in before the season proper.
Yeah, and it's good to have the space while we can, because I know the women's cricket stuff's starting up really soon. So while you have the facilities, it's best to make the most of it and use it. Yeah,
and the girls have been training the house down. They've been getting some really good practice games in as well. So I think our Scorps and strikers women will be starting. The WBBL. It's exciting times for South Australian cricket.
Yeah, absolutely. So now, I guess going back to the very beginning and why you're here, how did you very first get into cricket, and what made you start to love?
Wow, Lily, I think it started in the early 80s, probably 81, when I turned on the TV one day. I was about 6 years old and watched Australia play. I think Dennis Lilly was running into bowl in a one-day game, and I think I was hooked almost immediately. And that love affair with the game of cricket has probably continued since the age of 6. And I knew from a very early age that cricket was going to be a major part of my life, and I've been incredibly fortunate that's been the case.
And so you started off with club cricket, I'd say, here down in South Australia, and then what was your pathway? How did you progress? Because obviously you represented Australia. So.
Yeah, well, I actually started in Sydney. So I was born in Sydney and moved to Adelaide when I was 10. So I played a bit of club cricket in Sydney at a local club in the Sutherland Shire, and then Dad got a job here in South Australia with the State Bank South Australia, which is now Bank SA. So we moved here in January of '86, and I linked up with Adelaide Cricket Club. And I played a bit of cricket at school, but predominantly Adelaide Cricket Club was my pathway underage, and just progressed through the ranks like every other kid, and just went through, played under 12s and under 14s, under 16s, got into the seniors, went E grade, D grade, C grade, B grade, A grade, and then I was fortunate enough to play for South Australia, and then on to Australia. So I've feel very, very fortunate of the opportunities that I've been afforded.
Yeah, brilliant.
And obviously, you talked about moving from Adelaide Cricket Club to South Australia. Was there a massive step up in between those two, moving from local cricket in a sense to state cricket?
Yeah, so I suppose, Ollie, going from, I've always said the biggest jump I experienced in cricket was A-grade Premier Cricket to Sheffield Shield cricket. For me, that's the biggest jump in the system. Yes, it is a jump from state cricket to Test cricket, but I don't think that that leap is quite as large as the club cricket. And the reason I say that is in Sheffield Shield cricket, you go from 4-day cricket to 5-day cricket, which is not a lot different. You play 50 over cricket domestic level and 50 over cricket internationally, but to go from club cricket from Premier cricket to state cricket, you go from playing Saturday to Saturday. You bat one week, you bowl the next week. You might play the occasional Saturday, Sunday, but then you go into 4-day cricket, 4 days on the bounce. And that's a massive change. And that's why in more modern times, second 11 cricket has become more prominent and more important because it bridges that gap between Premier cricket, club cricket, and first class cricket. And I think it's a vital step in the chain.
And obviously you talked about how, you know, the step up was tougher to South Australia than to Australia. Did that make the step up to Australia easier in a sense, knowing that you'd, you know, potentially done the hard yards earlier on? Did that make it easier to acclimatise?
Look, it's still certainly a step up. I mean, make no mistake, it is a step up. But I think the grounding of first-class cricket certainly helps you progress to Test cricket. And I think the strength of Australian domestic cricket is the quality of Sheffield Shield and domestic one-day cricket. It certainly really prepares players to progress to that next level. There's no doubt about that. The quality of cricket, the quality of surfaces that we play on really prepares players to play for Australia. And, you know, for me, that pathway is absolutely vital. And that's why Cricket Australia put a lot of emphasis, a lot of value on Sheffield Shield and domestic one-day cricket, because it does battle harden, I suppose is a good term of phrase. It battle hardens players to make that step up to the ultimate, which is Test and one-day internationals, and players have had that grounding at the level below.
So now, obviously, moving on, you know, progressed through South Australia and then onto Australia.
Yep.
Do you remember your Australia debut? And if so,
yep,
can you tell us about that and the experience for, you know, representing your country?
Yeah, my one-day debut was in the Premadasa Stadium in Colombo. We played a one-day game against Sri Lanka. Don't think we won that game. Might have got a wicket. I can't entirely remember, to be honest. But certainly my Test debut was in Sydney against the West Indies. That was quite daunting, obviously facing big fast bowlers from the West Indies as a batting, but my job was predominantly bowling, and you know, I managed to pick up 2 wickets. Curtly Ambrose was my first wicket, and Kenny Benjamin was my second, so 2 tail enders. But you take any wicket in a Test match, so I was delighted just to get a baggy green and be part of that. So that was very exciting. And and then my second Test was at the MCG Boxing Day Test, and I ripped my side after 3 overs, and then was out for 6 weeks. So that wasn't very memorable at all.
Ollie, I think, did you fact check that first one?
Yeah,
you did.
Yeah. There wasn't a wicket in there. None for 27 off 6 overs. Was your bowling spell?
Oh, the one day, my one day. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I couldn't remember if I got a wicket or not. I remembered I bowled okay, but yeah, I don't particularly remember. I actually don't remember a lot of the game, to be honest. You know, but I do remember a lot more of my Test debut, which probably ties in with my, I suppose, growing up. My goal, I wanted to play for Australia, but you know, Test cricket was always at the forefront of my mind, more so than one-day cricket. It's not disrespecting one-day cricket, but it just, I think Test cricket was always my first love, and that was probably more in my mind, really.
Yeah, and Test cricket's probably seen as the pinnacle of cricket for most observers, be it fans, players, coaches. Do you still see that now as a coach of Test cricket, that you prefer red ball cricket to white ball cricket? You know, even coaching now after your playing career?
Yeah, I mean, I love all forms of the game, no question. But I if you ask me as a fan, what do I prefer to watch? And it'll always be Test cricket, hands down, every day of the week. You know, I do enjoy one-day cricket, no doubt. And, you know, obviously T20s come in, and it's a pretty important part of the calendar these days. I'm fortunate enough to have been involved in T20 as a coach. I did play a bit of T20 cricket as a player, but I've certainly coached a lot more T20 cricket than I did play. And I absolutely love T20. It's a great addition to the cricket calendar. And it's brought a lot of new fans and people to the game, which is really exciting.
Yeah. And just on the red ball cricket, speak about the pinnacle of Australian cricket certainly is to get a baggy green, and you had many time stepping out for Australia, perhaps in the best Test series of all time as well, in the 2005 Ashes series, which is, result wise maybe one you not look too fondly on, but maybe for me slightly more, given that England obviously won it and won the Ashes back after a long time. What was the mood in the Australia camp like despite the defeat, and is it a series you look back on rather fondly, like being a part of that?
Yeah, look, being part of it was fantastic. It was really disappointing to lose it. And the bare facts are we were outplayed, plain and simple. I know personally I was incredibly disappointed with my output. I bowled poorly, lost my spot in the team, and rightly so. I wasn't bowling well enough. I obviously reflected after that series on what I could have done differently. I remember my preparation leading into it. I was probably in self-preservation mode. I was just not going through the motions, but I was very protective. I didn't want to get injured, so I was only sort of training at kind of 3/4 pace. And what I learnt was that I was probably my training probably reflected how I went into that series. I went into the series probably a little bit underdone, a little bit of that because I'd trained at sort of 3/4 effort because I was so worried about my body and making sure I didn't get injured, that I went away from actually best preparing myself for a tough Test series, and I probably got caught on the hop a little bit. So that was a real lesson for me, learning, and I've certainly taken that into coaching. When I see, I can see players who maybe are just holding back a little bit, and I can challenge them on that, which is great.
Yeah, and you mentioned there about taking it from when you played into your coaching now. So after you finished playing, was coaching ever in your mind, or was it ever, did you not know what you wanted to do post playing cricket? And if so, why did you want to start coaching afterwards?
Yeah, it's a really good question, Lily, and one I thought about a bit. It wasn't probably until right at the last year of my career, really. I played for Glamorgan in 2008, and I just started kind of helping out one or two of the bowlers at Glamorgan. In my role as overseas player, players will come up to you as an experienced player and just ask opinion, ask your thoughts on things, and have cricket conversations, and things just went from there. And I was talking to them about bowling and tactics and things like that. And I remember our director of cricket, Matt Maynard, actually said to me, "Have you ever thought of coaching?" And I said, "Look, I haven't really." And he said, "Well, don't be afraid to have a think about it. Maybe get your coaching levels. You never know where you may not coach, but it might be something that you think about doing." Because he said, "Look, I certainly think, that's something that you could do down the track." And which was very nice of him to say. And I thought about it a bit more. And then I played in the Indian Cricket League, the ICL, the one that predated the IPL. And I'd just helped out the team I was playing for. John Embury was coaching, and just helped him out with training sessions and fielding drills, things like that. And I started to think that maybe this could be something that I could do. And then did a couple of little coaching roles. Coached the SA country team to last place in the country championships. So I thought my coaching career got off to a great start. And then got an opportunity to coach in Zimbabwe, which was a domestic team there. They were redoing and their whole domestic structure, refurbishing that. And I got an opportunity to coach Midwest Rhinos, and took the family, packed them up, and we all moved to the middle of Zimbabwe. And that, to this day, I still count that as probably a turning point in our lives, in my life, as my professional life, going from playing and then into coaching. And from that moment on, found I really enjoyed coaching, and things have just gone from there.
It's wonderful. So you mentioned there about, your family packing up and going to Zimbabwe with you. Now, how much of an effect does it have on that kind of family dynamic? Like, do they come to all the places you go? And if so, how's that been with you and your family
Well,
as a coach?
it was interesting. We had a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a 9-week-old when we left for Zimbabwe. So my wife, Anna, absolute trooper, she only asked one question. She said, "Are we going to be safe in Zimbabwe?" And I said, "Look, I've been there a number of times. I know some people there, and I can, is naturally going to another continent to live and bit of the unknown. Naturally it's a bit of a question mark. And but I assured her that we'd be fine, and we enjoyed the experience. I probably enjoyed it more than my wife. Is obviously looking after 3 boys under the age of 5 in a foreign country, not knowing anyone was a and keeping them occupied while I had a great life. I just walked to a cricket ground. I'd drive to the cricket ground, be involved in cricket and that each day, and come home and she's having to almost fend for herself a little bit. But she ended up meeting a few people and creating some friendships there, which was great, and found some activities for the kids to do. And it was just a great learning experience. But then I got the opportunity to, I got offered the job coaching Yorkshire in England. And so we went straight from Zimbabwe straight to Leeds. And that was a start of, 5 wonderful years working and living in England and coaching in the county game. So, so it's, where the world takes you, you have to go for, work and opportunity. And I thought that the only way I'm going to get opportunity, because I had applied for a couple of jobs in Australia and didn't get any answer, didn't even get a reply on one of them. And, I think the handbrake was I didn't have much coaching experience. So I thought, well, I've got to be willing to go anywhere to get that experience. And, I'm very fortunate. The opportunity in Zimbabwe came along, and then the opportunity in England. And that certainly helped me going forward.
Yeah, and I mean, it worked out in the end, didn't it? Because you're sitting here in South Australia, and you've been, coaching all over the world, and hopefully a successful team in this upcoming summer.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, there's no doubt that I would have struggled to get a role in South Australia, had I not had experience elsewhere. I mean, South Australia is one of the bowling coach role was one of the jobs I applied. A couple of years after I finished playing, there was a bowling coach role here at South Australia, and I applied for that and missed out on that role. And that came down to purely, it was absolutely no issue there. It was the fact that I didn't have any experience as a coach. I had experience as a player, but that doesn't necessarily translate into you being a successful coach or a good coach. So I knew that. I knew that I had to go and get experience. So and I was prepared to do that. And I think you have to, if you want to go into coaching, you can't just put a caveat on that, oh, well, I'm only going to coach where I live. Yeah. Is that very much limits your options, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, obviously, we do want to talk more a little bit about your coaching and where we're kind of at now, but very quickly, just touch on the final parts of your playing career.
Yep.
Now, you played in the 2006 test against Bangladesh,
yep,
which was pretty memorable for you, I'd say, for a particular reason, after scoring a double ton as the night watchman.
Yep.
So what was that whole experience like, and how did that happen?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I'd obviously been dropped from the Ashes in 2005, and then I'd played the summer for South Australia, and actually took about 40 wickets from 10 games. So I'd had a good summer, and that Bangladesh tour had come on the back of a full summer that Australia had in Australia, and then they went to South Africa. And then the 2 tests against Bangladesh and a couple of one-days were basically right at the back end of the Australian summer. And I think there was a bit of fatigue and a bit of tiredness. A couple of players were rested, a couple of players were injured, and I got a late call-up. And I think my experience on the subcontinent probably got me over the line ahead of a couple of the guys that were on the tour originally. And I was picked to play, and played both the tests. The second test in Chittagong, I knew I was there very much as a replacement player. So although I had experience, I knew I was kind of well past my best from a bowling perspective. But I saw it as I got nothing to lose. A couple of opportunities to play a couple of test matches for my country to finish off my career, and then I was a bit surprised when Ricky asked me to go in as night watchman. I jumped at the chance because I thought I'm never going to have a better chance of scoring some runs. I thought I might, if I bat well, I might get to 50, but never in my wildest dreams did I think I'd get a double 100. So that was a lot of fun. I have a lot of fun on sportsman's nights talking about it. I can stretch that story out to about an hour now. But yeah, all in good fun. But what was quite funny about that series, I was man of the match, man of the series. I think I averaged 240 with the bat and about 11 with the ball, and then never played again. So, but it was quite a nice way to finish. Adam Gilchrist allowed me to, gave me the honour of leading the team song for the final, for the second test, after the second test win in Chittagong, and that was a really nice way, memorable way to sign off as an Australian player.
Yeah, well, that's it. And I mean, a lot of players, I think, would be quite satisfied with 100, but you just went and doubled that. So
absolutely, and I think even our players now, they get sick of me signing off messages on our WhatsApp group, reminding them when training starts with I sign off with thanks Dizzy 201, and I think they get a bit annoyed with that. But I just try and have a bit of fun.
No, yeah, that's brilliant. So now, I guess going on more to your coaching stuff, you've obviously been coach of the SA Redbacks for quite some time, and the Strikers as well.
Yep.
Now, as we've known in the past couple of years, and as we've seen in Big Bash, you've signed some younger and I guess players that we wouldn't necessarily know, like Phil Salt and George Garton and Rashid when he first signed.
Yep.
So what is it you look for in these international players, and what makes you want to sign them?
Yeah, I mean, Rashid's a really interesting one. We were questioned, not necessarily criticised, but we were questioned a little bit. Oh, who's this person? And but people want to see big names, and then I understand that, but big names start somewhere. They have to start somewhere, and I think the key to getting good recruits, you want good people. They obviously got to have a skill set that you need. And what we saw with Rashid Khan, he bowled mystery spin or spin. He kept the stumps. He keeps the stumps in play at all the times. He's got a great management of the length he bowls, very similar to Adam Zampa, but keeps the stumps in play all the time. Subtle changes of pace, can spin the ball both ways, and we felt in Australian conditions against predominantly Australian players who can play spin, but sometimes they have trouble dominating spin, particularly mystery spin. We felt Rashid was an amazing fit, and he has been unbelievable for us. He's been with us 5 seasons now, and just signed him again for BBL. We signed him in the draft. We another team tried to get him, and the Melbourne Stars had a crack at him, and we put the little paddle up and said no. He's an Adelaide striker. So because we see him as a franchise player, he's he doesn't want to play for anyone else. We don't want him to play for anyone else. And I think it's great for our supporters, our fans, everyone associated with the franchise that we have having the number one spin bowler on the planet be part of our franchise is absolutely fantastic, and I think all our supporters would agree. And he's dominated the BBL for many years now, and and hopefully he'll continue to do that for many years to come. You mentioned a couple of other guys, Phil Salt, George Garton. We signed Colin de Grundum as an older player, but he's fulfilling a specific need for us this summer coming up as an all-rounder, a batter who can offer us some bowling, and a player from England, Adam Hose, who is a very dynamic middle order player who we think can really complement the rest of our squad this coming BBL.
Also, on Rashid, quickly, I was as a Stars man, I was pretty happy that we had, at least had a go at it. We wouldn't let you have him for free. That would make you use the pick pretty high up, but me and Lily had the dialogue.
It didn't matter, mate. I made it clear to everyone that we were signing Rashid regardless. So I said to all the other franchise coaches, I said, go right ahead. You can do that. We're signing Rashid. So that's why the Renegades didn't even bother with the first pick, because they knew we were going to sign Rashid anyway. But the Stars, they just thought they'd try their luck. Good on them, but it was never going to happen.
I wouldn't have expected it to. I just saw it up on the screen. I'm just thinking, there's no chance it gets rejected, but at least we've had a run at it.
Correct. And fair play to him. We would have probably done the same if we were in their shoes.
Oh, absolutely, because like you say, he's one of the best players in the world and one of the best players that the Big Bash has ever seen. So he'd be foolish not to try and have a go in my book.
Spot on.
But yeah, that's the way that seemed to work, and it's looking good for the Strikers this year. I think it's been an interesting start to the history as a club. But what keeps you involved with the Strikers, and why are the Strikers that place that you enjoy coaching at, and you've really develop your career at, in a sense as well, in a coaching sense?
Yeah, it's just an enjoyable experience. BBL over summer in Australia. We've had a tough couple of years, obviously, with the COVID pandemic, but we're looking forward to welcoming full crowds back this season for BBL 12. I've been fortunate enough. I started my BBL coaching career in BBL 5, so I've been around for a little while now, and it's a lot of fun. Plain and simple, it's a lot of fun. I think I add value and help the team progress, and yeah, it's just a lot of fun. Basically, it's a good crack, the BBL, and it's continually evolving, which is what I love.
Yeah, it seems a lot of fun, doesn't it? It seems like the short form, like the rock stars of cricket. You've got your Test cricketers. It's a lot more straight down the line, like sort of hardened cricketers, and white balls a bit more expressive in a sense. So that seems to shine.
And look, I think the BBL, is one of the best T20 tournaments in the world. I put it up there with, obviously, IPL is a big one that people talk about. The PSL is very popular among players. The NatWest T20 Blast is a fantastic tournament. I've been heavily involved with that for many years, and probably a little bit undervalued by the powers that be in the UK, in my opinion. I think the T20 Blast is a great tournament. And then we see the other ones. We see the Caribbean League. We see the Super Smash in New Zealand. We see Bangladesh Premier League. There's some new ones coming on board in terms of the UAE League and the South African League. So look, lots of great T20 competition around the world, and it's just shown the growth in that space.
Yeah, and you've spoken before about your coaching career and how it sort of started with your travel into Zimbabwe and going to England. Do you think those experiences outside of Australia have really helped your coaching career?
Oh, without a doubt, Ollie, without question. To be able to experience different environments, different cultures, has been unbelievable for me. The Zimbabwe experience really taught me a lot about how to manage people from different backgrounds and who've got very different experiences. It was an environment where sometimes cricket wasn't the very number one thing on players' minds. They had other things to deal with in their lives, and I think it taught me a lot of humility and how to deal with people and situations. So, I'm very thankful for that. Coaching was part of it, but it wasn't it was certainly part of it. And I learned a lot about actually coaching and the cricket side of things, but managing people was a big thing for me there. And it's probably shaped the way I've coached. I'm probably not as technical a coach as some others. I do dabble in that, but we have, as a head coach, I'm kind of more making sure that the environment is right, and everyone's okay and supported and backed. I've got skills coaches, batting coach, bowling coaches, fielding coaches, working specifically one-to-ones with players. I'm kind of taking a more overview of the whole squad and managing that as best I can, which is great fun, and I absolutely love it. But yeah, the experiences in Zimbabwe, experience in England. I did a short stint with Papua New Guinea as well, so that was another 2-month experience that I absolutely treasure and cherish. To have that opportunity to be in yet a different culture, different environment, and learnt a lot there as well.
Yeah, and is it obviously spoken about those experiences and how they've helped you? Is that the main reason why you coach, or is it to stay in the game? Is it to nurture players? What do you think the main reason is why you've stayed in coaching for so long?
I think a combination, mate. I love seeing players get better and help them improve as individual players and people. and achieving their goals, achieving their dreams. And if I can play a small part in that, that's fantastic. But also the other side of it, I'm incredibly competitive. I love winning. I don't like losing. So winning games of cricket is a massive part of what I do, and it pains me when we're not achieving our goals of winning games of cricket, and I'm hoping to, certainly here in South Australia, we haven't had success for a little while now, so hoping we can turn that around and push our players, individual players, for higher honours, and as a team pushing for success and trophies.
Absolutely. And I mean, look, I think as Strikers fans specifically, I think we're all looking forward to hopefully reliving that 2017 Big Bash era BBL or 7.
Yeah, BBL 7 it was, yeah. So, yeah, mate, Lily, I'd love that as well. Don't you worry about that. And we feel we've got the squad that can compete for the trophy, so we're really excited about that.
Yeah, it's going to be super exciting. I mean, it's been a long time coming. It's been that amount of years up till now, so we're ready for a win again. Ollie's probably hoping for the Stars, but I'm definitely on the Strikers side. So now going back to last Big Bash season.
Yep.
Now that was probably one of the most hectic situations, obviously from a viewer perspective, but it must have been mental from an inside perspective. Players being affected because of COVID. I know Strikers not as much in comparison to other teams, specifically the Stars. So what was that whole tournament like, and what was the preparation like when compared to pre-COVID?
Yeah. Look, we were quite not strict with our players, but we made it really clear that we've got to minimise our exposure and settings where high risk settings, because we just did not want to be affected by COVID. And we saw other teams were struggling with it, and we had our issues like every other team, but we minimised that as best we could. Look, it was a strange time for everyone, wasn't it? And we're still, I suppose, there's still the effects of the pandemic are still in our society at the moment, so very mindful of that. But look, it was hectic. Probably the season before was in real strict bubbles and the like, and so we just had to think on our feet and be very flexible and be able to change plans and things on a whim, really. So I was really pleased for players and coaches that players were really adaptable and open to change. For me as a coach, I'm very big on that. Players have got to be adaptable, because you don't want adapted players, you want adaptable players to be able to adapt to different scenarios, different conditions, different environments, and that certainly last couple of years has been what it's been about, due to the circumstances that we found ourselves in society. So hopefully it can be a bit more, I suppose, return to the normal, so to speak, and hopefully we can put our best performances forward and really challenge hard for that trophy. It'd be great.
Yeah. And I mean, look, also talking about the crowds, like you mentioned earlier, and on top of COVID and maybe the longevity of the season as well, because half the oval was blocked off last year because of COVID, which has really affected the crowds. Yeah. So now that it's kind of faded a bit, hopefully the crowds will fill up a bit more. But what do you think on the limited crowds and during the Big Bash?
Look, it was, players like to play in front of big crowds, but also we can understand that the public as well, there'll be still some concerns about, people ultimately don't want to catch a potentially deadly virus. So, we understand that, and very respectful and understanding that people are probably a little bit concerned about being out in public settings with lots of people around. We get that and we understand that, but we're hopeful that, the crowds will be a bit more normal, what we're used to in the recent times, this BBL, then that's exciting for us. And because players want to play in front of the big crowds, with lots of people watching on TVs as well, and put their best foot forward. We firmly understand that we are in the entertainment industry. We are here to entertain people. We're here to win, absolutely, no question. You ask any coaches, any players, we're here to win. but we're also very mindful of the fact that people part with the hard-earned dollars. Everyone works really hard for their money, and we're competing for those entertainment dollars, and we need to. The onus is on us to entertain our fans as much as we can. So we want to go out and play exciting, positive cricket that people go, wow, that was a lot of fun to watch. And those players, those Adelaide strikers, go out there with a smile on their face, and you can tell they're loving what they're doing and enjoying it, and putting on a show for us fans. And that's always our goal every time we step out on the park.
So Jason, one final one from me. In 1996, you made your Australian Test debut. You became the first ever male Indigenous cricketer to play Australia. Do you see yourself as a role model for other Indigenous cricketers coming through the ranks? And is that something that you take pride in?
Look, I take absolute pride in it. Being a Kamilaroi man myself, absolutely. It's a huge honour for our family, for myself. And it's something that I hold very dear. At the time, it was really interesting at the time. It came out maybe a few years later. I remember Robert Craddock, the great cricket writer, wrote a story about me being the first Indigenous player. And I must admit, my naivety at the time, I just assumed that there were a number of players who had Indigenous heritage, Aboriginal heritage, before me had played. And so I probably didn't understand quite the significance of it at the time. And but I suppose as the years have gone on, I understood that a little bit more. But certainly it was not something that was ever hidden or, growing up, we all knew, my siblings and I, we knew our family history, and, all my mates and at school, it was all, we all knew that. So yeah, as for role models, I mean, the term role models I've always found interesting. I agree with it, absolutely. I think, in my opinion, the best role models are the ones, if they go out and show the pride and passion for what they're doing. I think that's what rubs off on people. You look at any sportsman any sportsman in any sport. If you see them going out there with a smile on their face, playing the game as hard as they can, as fair as they can, well, not as fair as they can, fair, but playing the game hard and fair and with passion and pride. I think that's what rubs off. And I think that by way of definition of a role model is someone that just goes out there and gives it their all, plays the game respectfully with a smile on their face. That's what rubs off on kids growing up. And I'd like to think that I did that as a player, for Indigenous kids, for any kids, I suppose. I hope that they saw a player that, wore that cap with pride and gave it his all each and every time he stepped on the park, representing our country.
And now you've got the trophy named after you, and there's a round as well, so that must be pretty
it's pretty cool. Yeah, it's pretty cool. We play in BBL, we play against the Scorchers each year for the trophy named after me, and the WBBL girls, they play for the Faith Thomas trophy. So it's pretty cool. It's very grateful for that honour. It's felt a bit weird a couple of times when we've lost the game and the trophy's been given to the opposition as opposition coach. That's been a bit weird, but yeah, huge honour and something that will always be there, I suppose, long after I've finished, my coaching stint with the Adelaide Strikers. I suppose that'll always be there. So I suppose it gives me an excuse to turn up to a Big Bash game long after I've finished coaching and be part of the BBL, which is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. Wonderful. Now I think, that's all we've got.
Thank you so much, guys.
Fantastic performance from one of the best emerging quick bowlers in the world game. 7 for 37 from this South Australian fast bowler that has made such an impression already on the history of Ashes cricket.
So that was the interview with Jason Gillespie. Absolutely wonderful to speak to him. An Australian cricketing legend, obviously taking so many wickets for Australia. He got a double 100 as a night watchman. Like, what more can you ask for?
Yeah, signing off Jason Gillespie 201. What is
Yeah, it was funny how much he mentioned that. And how much
Dizzy
you bring
201, I
out.
think it was. Yeah, Dizzy
Yeah.
201.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe that's the podcast title. I don't know what we're going to come up with. Maybe we might include that somewhere just for his humour and for his benefit. But
Yeah.
it was wonderful to speak to him. And he's obviously done more than play cricket. He's done a lot outside of his playing career. So it was great to chat to him about everything. And he was so down to earth, as you mentioned, on the lead-in. Absolutely wonderful to speak to him and a privilege to have him on the podcast.
Yeah, so thank you, Jason Gillespie, for coming on the podcast if you listen to this. But next week, we will be back with another guest. In the meantime, you can follow us on social media, Twitter, Instagram @howsatTCP, or send us an email at howsatthecricketpodcast@gmail.com. But that is all from me this week.
Likewise, hope you enjoyed the next full week of cricket and take care, everyone.
How's that? You missed about